I just want to see people. Okay, go ahead. You start. I'm going to get this going.
Boy. All right, Sarah, do you just want to grab that one right there?
Yep, I got
that one. My bad. Great start. All right. I just didn't want the mics to conflict here for a minute, but Sarah's just going to get a few things ready so that we have kind of our notes on hand. But yeah, so it's just we're really excited to be here. Also, we're a little nervous. I'm not sure. I think the enemy's trying to get after us a little bit as well. I got just a little bit sick earlier this week. I haven't had an ear infection since I was a little boy, and all of a sudden it was like boom, ear infection. I kind of feel like I got a hand over my ear. So if it's Sarah's turn and I don't stop talking, she may have to just be like, whoosh, because I might not hear her tell me to switch. You might need to use the wooden podium. Yeah. So it is just really neat. The Lord has had us on quite a journey for the last couple years. And actually, when David said, hey, a couple years ago, we had someone come and start working on casting vision, is honestly kind of a similar time frame that the Lord started just working for us and going, hey, there's change coming. And it has been a 2-year journey of actually being like, what does that change actually look like? And then the details kind of starting to come together, and then eventually finding out exactly what it meant in terms of being here, a part of this church in Salmon Arm. So yeah, we wanted to, I think Sarah's kind of got the slide up. So we have lived in the United States for the last 10 years. So I lived in Salmon Arm about 10 years ago. And there was a moment in time where I was like, I want to learn more about the Lord. And I decided to go to a ministry school in the States. Sarah also went to the same one. That's where we met. We got married in 9 months, and I immigrated to the States, and we have lived there for the last 10 years. And we've done a few different things. But the last thing that we were doing before coming here was that we were the caretakers of a Christian camp and retreat center. I did all the maintenance and was on like the physical plant committee and took care of the grounds and had lots of vision and ideas for things. Sarah did all of the guest services, was a part of the board, and helped just direct the vision of the camp and push things. And then I had my own remodeling company, and then we were just doing our best to be a part of the local church that we were involved in. But we're kind of just doing that. That was our last kind of 5 years were that. Living and working and just trying to serve the Lord and see what he had. And in that time was when this happened. So it kind of started, it was 2022? Yes. So fall of 2022, we were actually headed to one of Sarah's college friends was getting married in West Virginia. And so I took time off of work and we went on a family trip to West Virginia. And on this trip, the Lord started speaking to us that change was coming. And he resolved a few things from our past and started stirring our hearts for what might be next. Would you like to take over at that point?
I'll take over.
All right, Sarah's going to take over.
Guys, I'm nervous. We've never shared this story, so it's kind of precious to me. We've shared bits and pieces, but we have not shared all of this, so I hope you like it. Also, it's Jesus, right? So I think people have asked me, how do you know when God speaks? And whenever we tell this story, you guys, Jesus likes speaking to us. God likes speaking to us, and he speaks our language. So in this story today, there's going to be actual, like, we're walking something out and the Lord speaks through it. He speaks through scripture. He speaks through dreams. He's speaking through other people. And I'm just excited to tell a story and then have the Lord just encourage you today. That's my hope.
I was going to say,
we're going to go back and forth a lot.
Yes, it was just really cool to me how many different ways the Lord spoke and directed us on this venture. And so he knows how to direct you the way that you listen and understand, but also it was just neat how many different ways he made all this come together.
Okay, so our story started in November of 2022. So we went to West Virginia, and this is us. We took a day. We just went on a little adventure. So we had road tripped across. We were in Illinois, road trip across to West Virginia, and we stopped at this waterfall. And I just want to note it because I'm going to bring up waterfalls later. And so this is how our story started, was with a picture of a waterfall. So I just wanted to show you guys this picture, but you can go to the next slide. On that day, Neil and I like coffee. And so we wanted to go get some coffee. And I put in my phone looking for a coffee shop. And we're in a bit of a remote place in West Virginia. So I think, no, we are. And I pick out a coffee shop. It's called Martha's Market. And I'm just hoping that it's not a gas station coffee, personally. And so I put it in and we start driving. And it was kind of like we were driving for a long time is what it felt like. Plus we had 3 little kids. And all of a sudden, you can't interrupt yet. We're going to keep interrupting each other. And all of a sudden, these turns started coming on our maps, and out of nowhere came this resort. It's called the Omni Resort. It's in West Virginia, and it was very shocking. Martha's Market is in this resort. It is a very expensive place. It's like $500 a night for the cheapest room. And so outside of it has all the BMWs and all the cars. And we're in sweatpants and sweatshirts, and we're just like, do we go inside? Like, what is happening? It was very shocking. So we go inside. You have to.
They definitely were going to know we were imposters. So we
Absolutely,
were like, wow,
yes.
we do not belong
Yes,
here. This
yes.
is pretty fancy.
So we go inside. There's like marble floors, chandeliers, all the things. They have a coffee shop. I go right up to the front and I just say, hey, we're traveling. We found your coffee shop. Can we get it? Can we come inside, basically? She's like, oh, yeah, it's downstairs. So we go downstairs and we're on a little vacation, and normally we're pretty frugal, but we let the boys all pick out a treat, and I get a latte and Neil gets a drink, and we go to pay, and she asked for our room number, and we just said, oh, well, we're not staying here. And I was like, is there an ATM? I can write you a check when we get home. Like, I'm trying all the options to pay. And she wasn't mean, but she wasn't particularly nice. She just goes, please take your stuff and leave. And so I was like, okay. So we left and we got back to the hotel, and I was sitting there. I put Mav down for a nap. Neil had taken the boys. They had $5. They were burning a hole in their pocket to go to Walmart. So Neil took the other 2. I put Mav down for a nap, and I was sitting on the bed in the hotel room, and I was like, Lord, what was that? Like, that was weird. And I just immediately heard him say, get excited because I'm excited. Follow me and know what is to come will be good, an extravagant surprise, and I will provide, just like the coffee. You don't have to hold back. You can tell me what you want, and just get excited because you've been driving for a long time, and change is about to come, and it's going to surprise you. So that was in November. And then I'm like, yeah, so Neil's going to take over. You can go to the next slide. 6 months later, so 6 months passes, and Neil's going to kind of touch base on that.
Right. So we actually felt pretty strongly. We got this word that change was coming, and it was going to be like, it kind of, the idea that we were just like driving through the hillside, felt like we were in the middle of nowhere, and then came around the corner and boom, there was this like ridiculous thing. He just was kind of like, yes, like it's going to happen, and then it's going to be kind of like this amazing thing that happens quickly. But change is definitely coming. So we were like, well, shoot, that's amazing. And then naturally you want to kind of start pushing on all the doors and be like, well, is it this? Is it that? So we were in the context of, where we were living and what we were doing. And I know that, there's some call on my life to be pastoring that's been prophesied over me in the past and things. And we were like, well, maybe that might be it. Maybe we're supposed to get back involved with this organization that we went to school with. And we kind of explored that a little bit. And then the church that we were a part of kind of had their own route to ordination. And we talked to the pastors about that. And although they were like, oh, yeah, that's great. Yeah, absolutely, we'll do that. It just never happened. Like, we just kept asking, and they were like, yeah. And then another few months would go by, and then more months would go by. And it was just like, kept nothing. And so we pushed on that. We thought about, well, maybe instead of being part of the, camp, we'll just do my business full time. We kind of thought about that, and that didn't resonate. So we just kind of like tried to start pushing on the doors that were kind of immediately in front of us that we could see. And they just like were all bam, bam. Some of them hurt your nose, you're just like, oh, Jesus, wow. Didn't have to slam it that hard. But anyway, so we're just kind of in this like, well, what's happening phase. And then so.
But I will say our faith was really high still. I was like waiting for an email that we need missionaries in China. And I was like, that's us, we're going.
Yeah.
Like I felt the Lord so strongly in West Virginia, but there just was nothing. It felt like forever.
Yes. So then that leads us to, so the following spring, we just, so we were not able to travel and visit my parents who live in Canada for that entire duration of COVID. So for 3 years, we haven't been to Canada. We finally got a trip together. We were able to go spring, May 2023. And this is just going to see the family finally after so long. And we had this, hey, maybe while we're up there, we'll kind of pray and see if maybe like coming up here might be the next option. So we visited my family up in Smithers. We had a great visit. We kind of prayed around the town and explored a bit and looked into possible job options and things, but none of that resonated. And so we had a lovely visit. And then we were getting ready to leave, and we were just like, well, I guess it's not Canada. If it was going to be Canada, we thought we'd kind of know something here while we're up here, and it just must not be. So we start traveling back, and we're...
My turn.
Sure. Well, I was just going to say, our leg of journey was like, Smithers, fly to Vancouver, Vancouver over to Toronto, Toronto down to St. Louis. So it's, it's a journey. So we're on the last leg. We're about to go from Toronto to St. Louis.
Yeah. You can go to the next slide. So we are about to board to St. Louis, and we're in Toronto Airport. And I've never heard the Lord like this, but this is not the exact picture. But this is what it looked like. I ran to go to the bathroom one last time before we were about to board. And it was as if I looked to the left, and there was a Canada sweatshirt, and the A was a maple leaf. And it was like everything stopped. Everything froze. And I heard the Lord on the loudspeaker behind me say, "You're leaving home. You're not going home. You're moving to Canada." And it was just like time completely stood still.
We were like, dear Lord, please not Toronto.
And so I was really confused because I was like, but I thought it was in Canada because I don't know. And if you challenged me on that, I wouldn't really want to live in Smithers, if I'm honest. But it just was this funny moment where I was like, but you said no, but now you're saying yes, and I don't want to go to Toronto. So what are you saying? Canada's a big continent. Could you give us a little bit more specified thing? So this happened to me. This wasn't to Neil, right? So we board a plane with our 3 kids, and I'm like, we're moving to Canada. After we just said we're not moving to Canada. And so we spent the next week. We went, I'll let you go from here?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Sarah got that word, which was really cool because the Lord spoke to her first. It wasn't like, I'm Canadian and hey, you're going to drag your family up there to where you're from. He spoke to Sarah first. But what was really neat, so I was like, I mean, that's a cool word and I'm pretty excited about that idea. But I mean, if this is a big deal and if it's real, then I really want the Lord to confirm it for me as well. And then for both of us, so we were like, man, this is really like heavy on our like mind and heart. We're like, are we moving to Canada? So finally we got back to Greenville, and a few days later, there's a high school girl that we paid from time to time to be a babysitter. So we were like, please come over here. Please watch our kids. We need to go on a date and talk to Jesus. So we got that. We went out for dinner, and then we just went and sat by a lake on the tailgate of my truck. And we just were like, Lord, can you please like make it clear? Is this what we're doing? Can you make it clear somehow right now? And Sarah had this moment where she
You can do the next slide.
heard the Lord say, well, you could just leave right there. Yeah.
Okay.
No, leave right there.
Yep.
Where she was just like, the Lord was like, pray to see a blue heron fly. And so she was like, all right, Lord, I pray that you would let us see a blue heron fly across the cove in front of us if we're supposed to go to Canada.
And we couldn't see any at that moment.
Yeah, and there was none visible to us right there. So it was like, we don't see any birds. It's not like we're like, okay, there's a bird right there. Please make it move for us or something. But it was like, so Sarah prays, and she finishes praying, and all of a sudden, 2 Canadian geese fly right in front of us, honking really loudly, flying north. And we're like, that is a cool bird. That's not what we chose, though, Jesus, but that would have been a much better choice. Canadian geese, that would have been like the sign, right? So we were like, well, so we kind of were chuckling about that. We were like, oh, man, that's not like quite what we were at. Like we felt you asked. And then we turned and looked where the Canadian geese came from, and this blue heron comes flying over and then lands right there. And we just both had this like, oh, wow, we are moving to Canada. This is happening.
I just burst into tears.
Yeah, So that was the like, oh, this is happening moment. Okay, yeah. Wow. So
tears because the Lord answered, and I felt pretty unworthy that we could say that prayer and he would just answer. But also excited and nervous and scared and all the things.
Yeah. So
do you want me to go first?
Yeah, can we go to the next slide, please?
So this, they're not connecting. So this is just to show how much the Lord, I feel like really at the beginning kind of spoke to me specifically. So this was that week. So Tuesday was the date with Neil. Wednesday we lived on a campground. So I went on a walk alone around the campground loop. And the first loop, they see a blue heron fly across the lake. come around the next loop, an entire flock of Canadian geese fly over my head. The next day, I go on a bike ride. I come down this big hill. There's a small little creek. I quickly look, and there's a blue heron that flies across. And then on Sunday, we go on a canoe ride, and we see 5 blue herons fly across the water. I listen to a sermon on a walk in the morning. They mention Canadian geese in my sermon. Like, no one does that. It just was like day after day after day. And so a week went by, and I was like, okay, I guess we should pack our suitcases. Like, I don't know where we're going, but we are clearly going. The Lord was just yelling at us, is what I was saying. Yeah. So I kind of started to make a bit of a timeline for you guys in the next, you can go to the next slide. And it's partially for us so that we don't keep you guys here all day. But the other part is just so that it was good for me. I went back through my journals in this last week and just going, wow, the Lord was just consistently speaking to us in various ways. And it was just it was a really, really hard year getting here, but it was just really cool seeing how the Lord has shown up. So I'm going to let Neil take over on June 12th. So now we'd gone to, the Lord told us a month ago that we're moving to Canada.
That's right. So it's just kind of been neat. So in this period of time, the Lord just like takes the whole Canadian geese and blue heron thing to this whole next level. Yes. We just see them everywhere, and it's just like on our mind constantly. And so one of these moments we're just like I was remodeling houses, and in the local town that we were in had one lumber store, but they didn't have all the materials I always needed. So we would make frequent runs to kind of the neighboring larger city that had Home Depot or whatever, and I would go get tile for showers or whatever else. So we were on one of these, we've been gone for a couple hours, have not mentioned moving or anything. We've got the stuff. We're driving home. We're just like on our way. And then Sarah looks over at me and she goes, what about Salmon Arm? And that very second, 2 Canadian geese fly right in front of our windshield.
like we almost had
we're like, any other time and day, this would be total coincidence. You're like, oh, look, neat. But we're like, we said Salmon Arm and there's Canadian geese. So this is one of those funny things where you're like, was it not? I don't know. But it sure kept it like real in our minds in that moment. But I'll let you do the next one there.
So at this time, we were also praying and fasting because, we just were. And there was a moment where I was just feeling a lot of weight of the move. And I took my Bible, I just grabbed my Bible and I went to our front porch and I just opened it up. And it opened up to Deuteronomy 30. And I had not been reading in Deuteronomy. And it says, the Lord your God will bless you in the land you're about to enter and occupy. And he was just speaking to me going, no, it's time. Like, it's time for you to leave this behind. And I'm going with you. And you are entering a new land and things are going to change. And so again, you can see that was, a week later. And then a couple weeks later, we had a kind of really funny moment.
Sure. So this whole time we're like, Lord, what is it? Where are we going? Canada is a very big general place. Yeah. And he just kept being vague, but kept being on about it. So one of my morning devotions, I actually wasn't reading in No at all. I was doing something else. And then this total foreign thought crossed my mind. And the Lord was like, when did the rain come after Noah was building? And I was like, oh, well, after he finished the ark. He's like, yes, after the ark was done, then the rain came. And the Lord was like, well, so the Lord said to me in that moment, he was like, your time, like the time of you going is also going to depend on your readiness to go. So get ready. And so I had this. Oh, go ahead. Sure.
Well, I'd been working out with a friend that morning, and she works in sex trafficking, and so she talks about big trauma. And she was like, we were literally lifting weights, and she goes, the story of Noah's Ark. Have you thought about that story? Talk about capital T trauma. Like, they get on a boat and then they get off the boat and there's nobody else. And she's just going on and on and on about Noah's Ark. And she's one of my best friends. And I was like, I know the story. Like, we can move on past this story. So it was very strange. And then I come home, I literally open the door. It's like 7 a.m. and he was like, have you thought about Noah's Ark? And I was like, what about Noah's Ark? So
so the Lord just kept doing this like weird game where he just was like bringing things up at the same time to both of us. I would say one thing that maybe we forgot to mention is after we both had this moment with the blue heron flying over the cove of like, oh, we're moving to Canada. As a first step of faith, we applied for dual citizenship for our boys. So our boys were just American, and basically they can be Canadian. You just have to basically apply and pay money. And so we did that. We were like, well, let's apply. That'll be our first step of faith. And as that comes in, we'll also know.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah.
But
so then time continues to pass, and we still don't know where we're going or what we're doing. We haven't told anyone. This is just Neil and I. So now it's been a couple months. So we just go, okay, well, maybe the Lord's speaking in a literal way. We saw him at a resort. So what resorts are in Canada? Our skill set would pair with resorts. So maybe we should just start looking at resorts. So we sent out some applications to Whistler and a couple other places. And I'll come back to this part, but those applications is actually one of my favorite parts of our story. So we send out those job applications, and there's just little moments that keep building. We could talk about them, but one of them was that Beckham, you guys, kids, he just kept dumping out his shirt drawer like day after day, and I just was like, stop doing that. Why are you doing that? Because I'm picking it all back up and putting it back in the drawer. And he was like, I'm looking for my Canada shirt because maybe one day we could move there. And we just hadn't said anything to them. And Liam had multiple moments the same. And so we were just like, wow, the Lord is
he was totally preparing their hearts too.
Yeah. And it was just really precious. You can go to the next slide. Still. Okay, so September rolled around. I have had hip pain since having kids. So it kind of started with number 2. And in September, the pain that I was having was just getting pretty excruciating. And so I ended up going to the doctor, and they diagnosed me with juvenile arthritis in my hip, like all the area where you hold baby. And then the pain was still continuing, and found out that I had a bulged disc. So this was in September, and I just wanted to make note. We moved here, and we came, and we went through the ACOP, so the denomination of this church, their commissioning process in September, a year later. And the first night of that event, someone got a word of knowledge and said, does anybody here have any pain? And I still had been fighting this pain, and you kind of get used to pain sometimes. Anyway, I raised my hand and she prayed, and I was healed that night. And I've been healed since. And it's just really cool to know I got diagnosed a year in advance, and then to come here and be getting commissioned in this ministry and be healed at that night. So go Jesus. That was just a really, really cool thing. And then when I was looking back through my journal, the Lord started speaking to other people in our life that were not living in our town. So the pastors that married us, that were in a different state, other people that we had done ministry with that were in a different state, started texting us and messaging us and just saying, hey, the Lord's putting you on our heart. We're praying for you. Something's happening. Something big is going on. One of them, go ahead.
I was just going to say some people that we hadn't talked to for almost a full year that we had talked to while we were on this trip to West Virginia. We'd stopped and visit with them. We had not talked with them since that day. And almost a year later, they just called Sarah out of the blue and said, hey, are you guys moving to Canada?
Yeah. So the Lord was just starting to stir, because at this point we still had not told anybody.
Yeah.
And I think it was starting to feel maybe a little lonely in that. And so the Lord started telling other people and just having them come and surround us. That was just really kind of him. And the end of September, there was a song, I don't know when it was released, but I know it was released in 2023 that I heard for the first time that we're going to play at the end. And I'll have the lyrics up, but it was a song that kind of became my anthem and I listened to all the time. So I'm going to play that song at the end. What were you going to say?
I just was going to say we don't want to talk badly about anybody, but moving countries is a big deal, and there's that stress, but also there was definitely opposition to us leaving, and that was quite challenging relationally with some people. So there was actually quite a bit of challenge and tension in our life trying to lead up to this move. We were definitely needing continual encouragement from the Lord because there was a lot of opposition. I'll just leave it there.
So we still haven't told anyone, but people would come to our house and go, we've really been looking for a recliner. And I'm like, you can have ours because we're moving. Like, I didn't say that, but in my head, I'm like, we're moving. Yeah. So we started just giving things away and started selling things.
Yeah. So we were like, well, if we're going to be moving to Canada, I don't know that all of our stuff will fit in a U-Haul. And so we need to start selling off all the biggest things that we can and just downsizing. And so we got rid of a lot of things, furniture, couches. We got rid of, we had a treadmill, we had a weight rack, we had kayaks, just large items that you're like, we don't know if these will fit. So let's just make them go. So we started paring down our house, and it was starting to get noticeable to people. They're like, why are you getting rid of all your stuff? But a lot of people we still hadn't told yet.
So So it's kind of a fun act of faith to go, Lord, I don't know where we're going, but I give you these kayaks that I love, and just kind of doing that as an act. So do you want to do this?
Sure.
You talked to Rod and Cheryl.
Yeah. So do you guys know Rod and Cheryl Barks? They came to dedicate the building of our church. So Rod and Cheryl are the regional directors for our fellowship of churches. They actually pretty recently took over that job, actually just in the spring. They took over from, I believe, what used to be Stan Powers after he passed away. Yes, so they were doing this over on the East Coast, and now they have come over here. Turns out, I knew this obviously in advance, but my sister married their son. And so when this idea of moving to Canada was like really starting to come, we were like, we don't know what the Lord has for us here. Let's just try and tap into any resources that we might have. One of those being, hey, there is a fellowship of churches that we know that Rod and Cheryl are a part of. Let's just call them and ask them about it. So we had a phone call with Rod and Cheryl, and we told them kind of what was going on with us and asked them about the church and how that was, and he kind of gave us the rundown and all the things, and he was like, if you guys were to come visit or whatever, then maybe try and when the time comes to really move, let's reconnect and go into this a little bit more deeply. So we kind of okay, that's really good. So we kind of put that on the back burner and continue to transition.
So one backstory there as well is I went to university in Indiana, and I was a part of a ministry on Thursday nights called Living Waters. And that is where I saw the most healings. I learned about prophetic. It was a very significant time for me. And so in this time, as you can imagine, we're Googling, right? Like we care about church. And so I'm just looking all over the place, and I find a church called Living Waters in Salmon Arm. And I go, Neil, there's a church called Living Waters in Salmon Arm. And he talks to Rod and Cheryl, and he goes, are there any churches kind of in this area? That would be ACOP.
Yeah, that would be.
He was like, actually, yeah, there's a little church called Living Waters in Salmon Arm. And I was like, what? It's ACOP? So I just was getting excited. And I ended up going back that same weekend, going back to Indiana to stay with the people that I had just done life with in college, and their pastors. And so, I ended up going back with them, and there's a very prophetic culture. And I show up and I go back to church, and that weekend I was prayed and prophesied that they saw living waters in me, around me, on me. I think it was 6 times.
Mm-hmm. By separate people who didn't hear
all
other
separate people. No one knew what was
separate
happening.
People got the word living waters over Sarah.
So it had changed from this Canada to now this word living waters was starting to kind of come up, and we were going, maybe we should do a scouting trip. But traveling is expensive with a family of 5, and we had just gone to Smithers. And so we just started talking about, well, maybe we should go back to Salmon Arm this fall. Is that crazy? I think that's crazy. I don't know if we can afford that. I'm not sure. So we started having this conversation. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I'm interrupting myself. I knew there was something else. That same weekend, though, our boys' dual citizenship was supposed to take a year, which is why we had applied so quickly. And I got it that weekend. So I was in Indiana, and I got an email that their dual citizenship had been accepted. So it took 5 months instead of 12 months. And then while I'm gone, Neil, you guys, last Sunday, Neil spoke. You can take. Yeah,
I briefly shared last Sunday about one thing. So obviously, money had been tight and all the things. So can you go to the next slide?
Sorry, I keep thinking they're connected.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I had said, hey, I had been, while she was actually gone on this little trip to visit some old friends that she knew might be a last time she'd get to visit them if we moved. While I was by myself doing just some devotions, I got this picture of, it was all cartoons. So this is a really awful sketch I made in Sarah's journal. It was all cartoon, but it was of basically this kind of green land with water. And then there was this white building with a red roof. And then there was all these goofy rectangles coming out of it. It was all in cartoon in my mind. And I was like, what is that? And it turned out that basically a year later, we were here, and the Prestige, which is red and white, ended up giving away all kinds of furniture. And we got dressers and desks and mirrors and whatever else, all from this place. And so they're all rectangles. So anyway, that was a really cool moment of provision. But yeah, that is the quick sketch I made in Sarah's journal. There's a lake, there's green over there, and it's a red and white building And that the Lord told me that a year ahead of time, a year ahead of the Prestige giving away anything.
Yeah. You can go to the next slide. So let's see.
Yeah, so we decided we were like, well, Lord, you've been speaking and speaking and speaking about us moving and preparing, and we've been selling stuff and we've been getting ready and we've applied for citizenship and we've gotten words. Like, what can we do to try and move this forward? We're like, maybe let's try and do a scouting trip. So we had been to Smithers. We really didn't feel like anything was in Smithers. We were really hoping it wasn't Toronto. So we were like, let's try and do a scouting trip still over in BC, but let's maybe try the Lower Mainland. I have a cousin in town and I have some relatives in Vancouver. And so we were like, maybe we can make a trip and visit some of them and stay with some of them as a cost-saving measure possibly. And then let's just see. So we're going to try and make a scouting trip happen. And if the Lord allows it to happen, we're going for it. And if the door feels closed, we're not going to force it. We're just going to try. So the first thing we did was obviously looked at plane tickets, and they were super expensive. And then
it was $5,000.
It was going to be $5,000 for us to try and check this out. And then, do you remember exactly the order that things happened?
I know that I looked at plane tickets on a Friday because I was feeling a little stressed at this point. And I just was like, Lord, if this is supposed to happen, I need you to plan it this weekend.
You looked at plane tickets. You also looked at the Airbnb,
yes.
and you emailed the Airbnb, and they got back to you Saturday morning.
That's so I got on the Airbnb, and one was highlighted to me specifically, and I was like, it's way bigger than we need. But it was highlighted, and so I messaged her and told her a little bit of what we were doing, and she said, yeah, it's yours, half off. We're about to sell the house, so we'll sneak you guys in one last time. And she gave it to us half off. And then I got back onto, we'd reach out to his parents.
Half off for a week.
Yes, half off for a week. We reached out to his parents and just said, you know, they'd want to see us if we're coming back to BC. So they said, oh, that sounds great. We don't have to fly. We'll come down, we'll pay for the Airbnb, and we'll meet you there. So we're like, okay. And then I got back online to look at the plane tickets, and they were half off. It was $2,500 for our whole family, and they were perfect flights and perfect seats. Like, I'm not exaggerating. And then we still have this big house in my mind. I'm just like, okay, Lord, well done. You did it. Good job. You planned the trip, and you gave me 50% off on everything. And we go to a birthday party, and my phone rings, and it's his little sister. And we saw her in May, and they're great. And she just goes, I miss you, and I want to see you guys again, and I wish it wasn't years until I get to see you again. And I was like, well, actually. And she goes, I wish we could just meet at an Airbnb somewhere, is what she said. I was like, well, actually, we literally just booked one in Salmon Arm on these dates, but she's in law school.
In New Brunswick. So she's across the country, not convenient.
And she goes, shut up. That's my reading week. That's her week off. It's a very random week. And so we were like, that's why we need the bigger house. So her and her husband and her son came, and they met us here. So we also got to have this little family reunion.
And then my older sister and her husband, he does concrete like crazy, works a lot. He also was able to take that week off, and they came down as well and joined us over there. So it was like big old family reunion. It was pretty cool.
It was just a sweet little addition to all of it. I'm going back quick. We told the boys, as you can see, on October 18th that we were moving, and that was Liam's response, was he'd been praying that we could move to Canada for a long time. So it's just really precious. But I'm actually going to ask David to come up because he's got a little insert here of what's happening on the ground for him. You guys, I don't want anything to just put it.
I'll go in there.
Perfect.
So, so just noting some of those dates, right? November 2nd, 3rd of 2023. So like I told you before, we had this year and a half long process of praying through these 12 prayer points. It had really taken us to a place where it's like, we need a young couple to come and help us. And so that was that, and very in the forefront of our minds as leaders. And so at the beginning of November 2023, I think it was on the 2nd of November, Don and I had to go down to the coast for a meeting with Rod Barnes because we're part of that organization.
Which this is Rod and Cheryl.
Right, this is Rod and Cheryl.
Sorry.
Right here. So we had to go down for a meeting with him. And so we went down, we had our meeting, and we went on the Thursday, I think the 2nd. We were leaving on the 3rd, the day in between those 2 dates. And we had our meeting, we were just winding up this meeting. We were in a restaurant having lunch, and in Surrey, so we're on the coast. And Rod was sitting next to me, and I knew that he travels a lot to various churches in our organization. I knew he has a lot of contacts. And so there at the end of lunch, I leaned across to Rod and I said to him, by the way, Rod, if you happen to come across a couple who have a heart for ministry, who are looking for someone to fit in, let us know. Maybe we can accommodate them in some way. And the moment he was out of my mouth, he just fired straight back at me. He said, a couple immediately come to mind. In fact, they're going to be in Salmon this weekend. And I was like, yeah, we're sitting in a restaurant in Surrey. And I thought, really? Let me in Salmon this weekend? I thought, that is strange. I said, that is amazing, I said to myself. And Rod was meeting with Neil and Sarah on the 4th, on the next day. And he told me that I'm meeting with them tomorrow on their way up to Salmon. And so Donna and I think it was later on, I said to Donna, I think it was on our drive home, as a joke, I said to Donna, maybe I'll turn up to church this Sunday at our church. Well, sure enough, 2 days later on the Sunday, that's right, wasn't it? The 5th,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
We were at the dance hall, and we used to meet at the dance hall. November 5th, 2023, in walked this couple, Neil and Sarah, that with their 3 boys that Rod had been talking to us about. And, once Donna and I figured out who these people were, and we can imagine we were pretty anxious. I better word might be desperate to get together with them and hear about their story and what this is all about. And so we met with them for coffee the next day, a 3-hour coffee date we had with them. And between a lot of interruptions and questions from us, 3 hours later, we heard this story for the first time. And my jaw just dropped. I was just wowed by it. And so that's a little bit from our side, and back to them.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, so it was just super, super neat, amazing. So our plan was to come and scout, and we were not necessarily totally fixed on Salmon Arm at the time of our scouting trip. We really were like, okay, here's a few points. Like, we're going to fly into Vancouver. We'll kind of pray and check out that area briefly while we're there. We're going to drive up, and our hub will be Salmon Arm, but maybe we'll drive down, Kelowna or Revelstoke or, whatever, and just kind of pray and see if there's peace in the area or what the Lord brings up. But so we're coming, we messaged Rod and Cheryl. We said, hey, like, we are coming to Canada. Is there any possibility we could meet? And they were like, oh, hey, guess what? We took the position over the West Coast Regional Directorship, and we're going to be coming to the Lower Mainland area to look for a house that same time. So we'll be there. Why don't we meet up for lunch? We're like, oh, that sounds great. Let's do it. So Rod was basically like, message me the day before just to like remind me, and so we can like set a time. And so we fly in, we're visiting with my uncle and aunt for a little bit, and I messaged Rod, and turns out I messaged Rod at the same time they were in the meeting with David and Donna. Right there, yes.
Yeah.
So we were like, well, so then we met with Rod and Cheryl the next day, and he's like, you won't believe it. These pastors were meeting yesterday. This is what they said, and they're part of this. And we're like, wait, Living Waters? They're part of this Living Waters church in Salmon Arm, and we're going to go check it out. We're like, maybe we should just like go check it out on Sunday. Let's just go check it out. And so we, going up there, we went with this mission of like, okay, we're going to scout out the area, but like the first priority is going to it's Sunday is next. And so we're going to go to Living Waters Church and see if the Lord has anything there, which was really neat because that was in some ways the beginning of like the firming of what the Lord was doing. It was like, oh, Living Waters is a target with the Holy Spirit. This is so we don't need to go check out Kelowna. We don't need to go check out Revelstoke. This is about here. This is really cool. So,
and we finished lunch at McDonald's, and we get on, I don't know the road. We get on the road to come to Salmon Arm, and it's raining, and the rain clears, and a rainbow goes over the highway. And I look up, and there's a building. You guys can look next time. There's a blue heron mural right there. So it just kind of felt like the Lord was like, this way, go this way, down this road. And so it just was, it was crazy. It just felt too much, a little much. So we come, do you want to talk about Whitstone though?
Yeah, I was going to.
Great.
Yeah, but
go ahead.
Right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so we get here. Obviously, we go to church, and we meet with David and Donna. Sorry, I couldn't remember your names there for a second. Meet with Donna. We have this 3-hour conversation, and we were like, wow, they were like praying and looking for somebody. The Lord has led us here. Wow, this is really incredible. Okay, so we really feel like Salmon Arm is it. So now we need a few other practical pieces. Like, Lord, what are we going to do for work? It seems like the church is small, and it's not like there's like obviously some associate's pastor position just waiting and available. Like we hadn't even gone through any of the process to become credentialed in this fellowship of churches yet. So we're like, how is this all going to work? We don't know. So on basically I think it was probably the Tuesday, I was like, Lord, can I go on a bit of a treasure hunt with you and see if I can find some work? And so I had sent out applications like we'd said in the past, and I had sent out a few more, but
which we
hadn't
heard
really
nothing
got
back
anything.
from anyone.
Didn't hear anything back from anybody. And so I got in the vehicle. We had rented a vehicle, and I was like, Lord, can you like lead me to something? And so I just went down to the local Home Hardware and asked the manager there. I was like, hey, are there any like reputable construction companies in the area that might be looking for somebody? And so he gave me some name cards for a few. And the very first one that he said was Whitstone Construction. So since he said it first, I just got on the phone and I just called and I talked to their secretary and I just was like, hey, are you guys looking for anybody possibly? And I gave her a little bit of information. And so she was like, well, why don't you just send in your resume? I'll send it over to the guys and they can take a look at it and we'll get back to you if we're interested. So I did that and didn't hear anything. And so I just went, back, whatever. And then the next morning, we just went on a little family hike up to Siphon Falls. And we were on the way back. And I just had this like, man, I would like to just show my boys and Sarah where I lived with my cousin back when I lived here in the past. So we drove and it was past the industrial park. There's a little trailer park behind on Shaw Road. Anyway, so I was driving past there. Turns out Whitstone's office is in the industrial park. And as we were driving, right underneath the Whitstone sign, my phone rang and it was the secretary. And she said, hey, the guys would like to meet you for an interview at 3:00 this evening. Can you come?
Also, they weren't hiring.
They weren't hiring, no, at the time. No, they were not. And so I was like, absolutely. So I was like, I think I'm right in front of your office. Can I just quick pull in and say hi? So she was like, sure. So I just said hey to the secretary real quick. And then we went on our day. And then I got to go have an interview at 3 with the bosses of Whitstone. And it was good. It didn't feel like anything spiritual. It was just a job interview. But we talked and I let them know that the reason we were coming here was kind of primarily the priority of the church, but I was definitely going to need work. And so they were kind of like, okay, well, I don't know what that'll look like as far as maybe taking more time, like not working full time and doing stuff at the church, or maybe not, I don't know. So there was a bit of like, okay, when you actually know that you're moving here, then kind of like contact us or, we'll see. So they didn't promise me anything at that time.
So the reason that the job is one of my favorite parts of the story is because I just feel like Jesus is really funny. So we sent out all those resumes, those job applications, and we heard nothing back from them. And my personality is like, he's amazing. You at least email him and tell him that you don't want him. But you be like, he deserves that. Like I was feeling this like, oh. And he applies for Whitstone and we send him over the resume that we had sent to all the other places. And somehow, I still have no idea except for Jesus, we sent a very old resume. It had an Ohio address, an Ohio phone number. And they had no way of contacting him. And so
some of them may have tried and
they probably tried and they couldn't. So the Lord was like, yeah, I'm just not going to let you have to be confused. So he closed all those doors and we sent that same resume to Whitstone and she saved Neil's number whenever he called. The secretary saved his number and she called and she said, hey, the resume you sent in doesn't have the right phone number, but I went back through the call history and found your phone number. Yeah. And so for me, I just was like, wow, I just get to have so much peace that he is exactly the job that he's supposed to be, and the Lord's going to provide through that in other ways. So there wasn't this thing in my head of going, well, this package is better, or this or that. Like I just got to be like, the Lord chose Whitstone, so I'm on board. And that was just a really fun little piece of the story for me.
Yeah.
And the owners are Christians, which is really cool.
They've been honestly super great. So
you can go to the next slide. So now things kind of start to pick up a little bit.
So now we know that we are moving. Now we know that we have, a purpose here. And it was one of those things where they didn't actually offer me a job at all, but I just had total peace in my heart. I just was like, I just know I'm going to be working for Whitstone. So I just didn't even try to apply anywhere else after that. So,
so we went home.
Yeah. We resigned at work and this is where everything became public. So
and things got really hard.
Then things got real interesting. Yes. So.
Let's see. So the next place for me is a house, right? Rental here is crazy. And so I spent a month. I messaged most Facebook marketplace places. I got on Airbnb. I got on VRBO. I did everything that I knew to do. And a couple options kind of came up. One, we were one of 80 that were accepted. And I ended up talking to him on the phone, and he totally knew Holy Spirit. He'd been a part of YWAM. It was in Enderby. It was a super cute house. And I was like, oh, this is it. This is totally it. And he actually ended up he was an investor, so he flew in to do interviews. So he wanted to meet us in Enderby, and I said, sorry, we can't do that. Just go ahead and go to the next person. So I thought it was gone. A week passed by. He calls me back, and he's like, I just can't shake your guys' story. I think we would like to offer it to you. And I just could not. There was no peace. I wanted it so bad, but my gut said, this isn't the house I have for you. And so I declined. So we were one of 80. We didn't go to the interviews, and he still called us and said, do you want it? And I was just like, I want it so bad, but no, I'm sorry. You go ahead and pass it on to the next person. So I was upset one night. We were in bed, and go ahead.
Basically, to preface this, it was basically Sarah's almost full-time job for a month to try and find a rental. And so she messaged every possible rental on the rental groups. Yeah. She talked to Airbnbs and said, hey, would you be interested in a long-term option? She looked at people who were selling and hadn't sold houses for a long time and said, hey, would you be willing to maybe rent or something? She talked to a lot of people and sent a lot of emails, and nothing was going. And then there was this one, and it was like, you can have it. And we were like, we don't feel peace. We actually finally have something, and it seems like a decent option. And the Lord's saying, no, this is really lame.
That was frustrating. So we were laying in bed, and I was crying. And Neil goes, why don't we just pray that someone will contact us? And I was like, why don't we just pray that someone will contact us? What do you mean? I've contacted everyone. There's no one to contact us. And so it was a very spiritual moment. But I had that picture before of our family in Salmon Arm. I had posted it on the Salmon Arm rental group,
Facebook
whatever
group,
it is, a month before that. And I had gone after every lead that came from that. And it seemed like there wasn't anything. So we prayed that night. I wake up the next morning to a Facebook message from the landlord of our current house. And he said, hey, my name is Aram. I saved your guys' picture and information from a month ago. I've been working on a little house downtown. And if you guys would be interested, I'd love to have a conversation. So it's walking distance. It is right there on 3rd Street. And I just knew when I saw his message that was our house. And so we ended up talking. It's a great little house. And then
So basically, he was very thorough. He did a background check. Yes. He talked to all the references. We had to submit a resume. It's not like you just handed it to us. We did a video interview. Yeah. David and Donna actually went and looked at this house for us and talked with him. Thank you so much.
David and Donna, John and Carolyn went and looked at a few.
They looked at a few places for us and vetted a few places for us, because there was one other option, and we're quite thankful it didn't happen. So
it had rats. Guys, I don't do rats.
Yeah.
No.
So, anyway, so this guy, so we do this. He even, let's put it this, at the time we had a dog, and we will get to the dog in just a minute, but we had a dog, and to try and find a rental place that will accept a pet, it eliminates 60% of them right off the bat, if not more. Yeah. And so he actually, the landlord was like, sorry, no pets. And we were like, our picture that was posted on Facebook had our dog in the picture.
No, it didn't. I had posted.
Oh, Joe, you posted that we had, and he was like, you are right. I missed that detail. Can I meet your dog? And so we had a border collie, and so we had to zoom the dog for him.
Have him do
sit, stay, lay down. Look, he's trained.
Troy and Mika, you understand. You're proud but weird.
Yes. Yeah. So anyway, he was like, okay, he's not just going to chew it. He's older. He's not going to just chew everything up. He actually is trained. He goes to the bathroom outside. Okay, I will let this go. And so we're like, wow, okay, we can go.
We gotta speed it up.
Yes. And then I fractured my ankle.
Yes.
So it's beginning of December.
We were planning to move in a month.
We were basically planning to move middle of January, and middle of December or early December. I don't remember the exact date. What day was it exactly?
December 15th.
December 15. Here's the most frustrating part. So we had chickens. We had 22 chickens. So I had a coop. We had built a run. We were doing the whole little homestead thing. It was great. We had now resigned. And so because we were at this camp, it's we got to clean up our stuff because the next people taking our job might not want chickens and they might not want this whole thing. So I was trying to get the yard ready. And so all I was doing, there was actually a day at work that materials had not showed up. And so I was waiting for materials because I was supposed to be working somewhere. And so I was like, well, I got a few hours in the morning to kill. I'm just going to clean up this chicken run. So I had the little tractor and I was just pulling out little fence posts. My son Maverick loves tractors, wanted to ride. So I had him on my lap. We just like pulled a fence post out and then I went to step off the tractor. Chickens dig holes in the ground and fluff around in them to get dust in their feathers. And also because the coop had been there, we got rid of that, but there was cinder blocks laying around as a remnant of that were in the process of being cleaned up. And I go to step off the tractor and I'm holding my son and I can't see and I step in a hole and I knew there was cinder blocks. So I didn't want to drop him. Normally I just kind of tuck and roll and I just like had to take the hit. My ankle was just like, and that was that. So all of a sudden.
And to tell you where I was at emotionally, he came inside hobbling and I was like, you're fine. Put it up, put ice on it. I cannot handle if something else is worse. Like I am so stressed. I can't. So just go put your foot up. And so that is that first one. We like prop them all in bed and we get them little things. And then, a few hours passes and he's like, it really hurts. And so anyway, we find out later. But he's like pushing boxes with his shoulders, like crawling around in the next few weeks. So yeah, we gotta speed it up.
We do need to speed it up. Sorry guys, it is.
I knew this was gonna happen.
This was
gonna
happen. So,
but I'm gonna throw in really quick. So we have a camper. We've been trying to sell it. This is a picture of our camper. We've been trying to sell it, trying everything. It's a great camper. It should sell. And it wasn't. And we felt like the Lord was a part of our purchasing of it. And I was just like, Lord, we can't take this camper. Like there was lots of reasons in my head why we could not take it. And I just felt his peace. And he goes, I want you to look at where you bought it. And so we had bought it 2 years before this. Mm-hmm. So before any of this Blue Heron stuff had started. And so we dig through, we find the paperwork, and the place is out of business. It is closed, but we bought it on Blue Heron Drive.
Yes.
And so I just was like, you win again. All right, we're going to keep the camper, I guess. I don't know. So we still have it and the Lord has provided, but it was just things like that where he just continued to show up.
Yeah. Something I just wanted to know, obviously fracturing your ankle right before you're moving is very stressful.
Oh,
it was not a good time, obviously, in terms of making money. I needed to finish projects that I promised would be done.
Yeah.
And then also, like I said, there was a lot of people there was some opposition to us moving, and some of those people were like, this is a sign that you're disobeying the Lord. And so that added some challenge to things. So anyway, it was really neat though, because in that was, there was some amazing things that happened. Actually, the Lord brought random people who gave provision for us there. And then also that was a time when this church body found out about it. And actually there was some provision and help that happened from this church body that really blessed us. And we got to start interacting and having people. Yeah. So that was just a really
we reached out to the
time.
Landlord and said, I'm so sorry. Please go ahead. You don't need to wait. We can't afford to pay for another month's rent. And he just said, no, it's yours. I'll wait. No charge. Just text me when you get on the road. Who says that? Yeah.
So he was like, when you get on the road and get here, I'll prorate your rent starting at that day when you move in. So he held it for us for basically over a month.
Yeah.
No charge. Which was
And then
nuts.
We contacted Whetstone and they said, no problem. The job is yours. Just let us know.
Right. Also in there, we said, hey, Whetstone, like, is this a job or not? Should we keep looking? And they're like, you know what? Sure, let's give it a try. So
okay, you can go to the next slide. I'm going to try and speed
it up.
I
know.
So we were supposed to move in
it was going to be January.
Sorry, moved in February. The weekend we were supposed to move, there was a statewide winter storm. Like we wouldn't have been able to get on the road. So that was just also a little fun thing. Then when our weekend finally came a month later, it was clear skies and beautiful driving. So just little things like that. And people continued to give us money, just show up. There was one Sunday I went to church, someone handed me $45 in cash. And it just felt like it was the Lord just constantly giving us the fish and the bread, and he just multiplied it. There was so many times where we did the math and we were like, we cannot afford to move. We cannot afford to move at all. There's no way. And then we would pay the bills and we would pay the next thing and we'd go, there's still money in the account. This does not make sense. This is kingdom math, not my math. And he just keeps showing up. So that was just really cool. So we took our dog to, I probably should just cut this out, but I'm going to go really fast. We took our dog, we love our dog, to the vet to make sure that he was healthy and happy and ready for a road trip.
He had started making a few coughing noises.
He made a few coughing noises. Found out he was really sick. He had heartworms. This is our dog, Wimber. We loved him so much. And so the boys are with me because I was homeschooling, and the vet says, he's really sick. He cannot really, I don't recommend that he goes with you. And in fact, he needs this really expensive medicine. And so it was very heartbreaking and very surprising.
Also, Sarah called the border agency and was like, can we take a dog? And they're like, if he has any hint of being sick, he can't cross the border. So,
yeah. Which I had mentioned earlier that the Lord had, I think it was the last slide, the Lord had said to keep an eye out for waterfalls. Just so I'm noting that. So anyway, 2 weeks passed, and in that, Neil and I are pretty heartbroken because we want to take this dog. We'd been planning on taking this dog. I thought it would be kind of a consistent thing for our boys to have the dog stay the same. So I was just feeling really sad about it, and we also just didn't know what to do because people don't take sick dogs, and we couldn't afford like all the things. So I go to church and I go up for prayer for my dog, which sounds kind of funny, but I was just like, Lord, I am at a loss. And so I kind of know them. I'm from a small town, my hometown. So I kind of know who they are. I know that they live on a farm, but I just am going, I need prayer for this dog. And she basically was like, I'll pray, but we'll take him. And I was like, what? What? And she goes, well, we have a kid in foster care, and he has been asking for a dog for a few years now. And we just said, if someone approaches us and they need us to take a dog, we're just going to say yes, no questions. We can afford the medicine, and we'll take him. So you guys drop him off. If you want to drop him off like the day that you leave, great. If you want to do it earlier, great. Just whenever you want. And they have 1,000-acre farm. And so I just was like, oh my gosh, our dog has a home and they love the Lord. Like, it just was a really cool answer to prayer. But I was still, go ahead.
I just wanted to add one thing to that, something that was super neat. So we were on this campground. So obviously our dog interacts with kids all summer, and they throw sticks for him. And he was quite loved, actually. And so it turned out that this foster son had spent the last summer at Durley, and Wimber had been a friend. He had spent a lot of time throwing sticks for Wimber because, sometimes he felt lonely or whatever. So when this 15-year-old boy found out that he was getting the Durley dog, he cried in church. So that was really cool.
Yes, but I'm still feeling emotional. It's my dog. Like, the Lord answered this prayer, but I'm still really sad. And so we get in the car, and I said the Lord told me to keep an eye out for waterfalls. And Beckham, in the very back of our van, goes, hey, Mom, look at this really pretty picture I took from church today. And just like holds this up. And so if you can see, it's 2 pictures of a waterfall. And it was just like the presence of the Lord was in the van, and he's like, I've got you. Like, I'm here right now. So that was just really cool. Cool moment. So this is us. We're loading up. We have a big event.
Slide, please.
Oh, sorry. I will one day realize they're not connected. So we're loading up. We're February 16th. We have a big event the night before we leave. So we leave early in the morning. I guess it's the 15th. Anyway, they give us a gift, very unexpected. And they basically, as a board, gave us money to cover gas for our entire trip. And it was just another unexpected, very unexpected, honestly, gift of provision. Can you tell the border crossing?
Yeah, so obviously sake of time. We thought we did research. We thought we were prepared for the border crossing. Turns out we were woefully not prepared for the border crossing, which is not a great place to be in when you show up to the border. Just one example out of that, because there's actually quite a bit. Turns out when you're going to cross the border with your goods, and now I'm Canadian, so I'm allowed to come back, but they want to know if there's anything super valuable, and then they would, anything over $10,000 that you'd have to pay tax on as you enter. And so we had heard that you need to write every item that's in every box and label it when you put it in there. So we had done that as we packed. So that was quite labor intensive.
Yes, that took a lot of work.
Turns out, not only do you do that, you have to fill out an entire list of every single item that you have in all those boxes on one piece of paper and their approximate value, so that you can turn that sheet in at the border so they don't have to go through your vehicle, and they can go, this is what is in here, this is what it's worth, and then they'll do a quick check on a few boxes, and if the things line up from the few box samples to the paper, then you get the thumbs up. We had not done the paper. So you show up to the border not having done this massive thing. They were deliberating 2 options. They were like, either you need to unload your U-Haul right here at the border, go through every single box, label everything right now. It'll take you basically till midnight, and then we can let you through once we know that. Or the other option would be, we let you through now, but you have to take the U-Haul then to your house, unload it, do the value of everything, take the U-Haul then back down to the Kelowna Airport base where the nearest agency is, and do this whole thing there for them, and then you may take it and actually unload it into your house. And they were deciding what they wanted to do with us. Long and short of it is, after a little bit, they just decided, the one guy came outside and took a look, and he's like, do you have anything in here that's super valuable? And I was like, honestly, really not. Like, look at all this old used stuff. And he was like, Okay, and he just wrote, so 10,000 is the minimum. Under that, you don't have to pay tax. Over that, you do. And he wrote $10,000, stamped it, and away we went. Didn't have to do anything. Got to just come on in.
And
so
really funny. He was like, "What's the value of your truck? And what's the value of this?" And he was like, 10,000, 10,000. And Neil was like, "I think," and I was like, "Oh no, he's just being nice." Like he wrote 10,000 for what all the things that we owned. So our
Yes.
camper is 10,000, and our truck is 10,000, and our van is 10,000, so that we didn't have to pay for anything at that time. We had some things.
We
come
still
up
ended
later,
up having
but
to like pay all kinds of import fees and inspection
Yeah.
fees and fix-it fees and things. But
But-
at the border, we didn't have to pay tax. So that was crazy.
That was amazing. All right,
was
next
crazy.
slide.
So-
This is our last slide. We're almost there, guys.
Mhm.
So Neil talked about it, but February 23rd, we got here. We had sold so much of our stuff, and we realized we actually do need a couple dressers. Dressers would be good. So we went to the thrift store and didn't see anything, and I don't feel like I said anything, but I was walking out, and a lady came up behind me, and she said, "Are you looking for furniture?" And I said, "Yes." And she's like, "Well, the Prestige is giving away all their stuff right now for free." So we zooped over there. So that's the picture. The boys and I, we were just like, we just got a whole truckload full of stuff. But that is the picture that Neil was referencing from October, those few months before. And then this last picture here is that ACOP weekend that we had in September. But for me, the waterfalls, it was really cool. Our first Sunday at Living Waters when we moved here, the bulletin had a picture of a blue heron on it, and the background picture was a waterfall. So it just felt like we had kind of we made it. The Lord had like pulled us through. And remember, we were scouting in November. I was like, there are blue herons everywhere. And I did not realize that this is like a blue heron capital of some sort.
Blue Heron capital of
Anyway.
BC. Plus,
Yeah.
it's the blue heron is like the Parks and Recreation animal sign for everything. So back a whole year earlier, the Lord gave us like the blue heron sign that is basically like this town's emblem for everything.
So now
posted
every
which is
week
nuts.
I get to go, yep, there's Jesus. Yep,
Yep.
there's Jesus.
So
This, oh, go ahead.
can I just say, so that is basically the like we got here. The Lord has done some incredible
Yes.
things since then.
Yeah.
Lots of incredible miracles, and we'd love to share them. Obviously, for the sake of time, that we can't. But the Lord has continued to provide, make things happen, and being a part of this denomination or fellowship of churches, it has been a real blessing. You guys have been good to us and embraced us, and we are really excited what the Lord's going to do for this church. We believe that He has some vision and some amazing things, and we are excited to be a part of that. We don't yet know what that looks like as far as the day in and day out and practicals of serving and helping and loving and where that will take us, but we're excited to find out.
Yeah.
So
This is our story, and we're nobody. Where Jesus just used us, and we said yes, and He took us on this really crazy adventure. And so the next slide is the lyrics to the song that I had mentioned earlier. And David, did you want to say something before we go into the song? Okay. So I don't know. When I was preparing this, I didn't want to just go, ta-da, here's this amazing story, because we're a family, and the Lord has so much for all of us. And I just wanted to play this song. The lyrics will be up. The tech team's amazing. I think I kind of asked for a lot of things this morning. But I was just hoping that we could listen to the song, you guys could read the lyrics and just go, yes, Lord, what else? What else? Because faith is scary and so fun, right? Like Neil and I were talking about what a gift it is to be able to be in the peace that we are in here, even in the unknowns and even in the hearts. We know that we know where the Lord has called us to be.
mm-hmm.
So we're going to listen to this song. The lyrics will be up.